Time is running out to plug the gaps in your national insurance record to ensure you get the full state pension. But should you do it? The full entitlement for the new state pension currently stands at £204 a week from April 2023. And for the old basic state pension, it's £156 a week from April 2023. But these are the full entitlement amounts. Full entitlement is based on your national insurance record and the amount of qualifying years that you have. Usually that's 30 for the old state pension and 35 for the new state pension. However, there are some cases where these figures don't really mean a lot. So if you're born before a certain age, or perhaps you went from the old state pension over to the new state pension, these things could mean that you need a lot more qualifying years than some other people. The worst case I've seen is a male being born before 1945, and in this case he would need 44 qualifying years to get the full entitlement. If you don't have the qualifying national insurance years you need to get your full entitlement, you could be leaving yourself way short of where potentially you thought you could be at retirement. This is why it's important to check your own record, and once you have the basic information you can work out whether it's beneficial to buy years or not. So is it worth doing or not? Well, in order to work this out, we're going to have to go through a few steps, and the first step is to check your record yourself. You do this by going on the government's website and you go on the pension forecast calculator. I'll leave a link down below in the description where you can find that. If you don't have a government gateway ID, you'll be able to sign up for one on the website itself. Now, once you've done this, you'll get two very important bits of information, and that is your current pension benefit to date based on your national insurance record, and how much pension you would get if you carried on working until your retirement age. Now, if these two figures are the same, then you don't need to do anything else. You've reached your full entitlement. You don't have to add any more NI years to your record. Job done. However, if these figures are different, then you need to do a few steps. Either you need to consider how much longer you're going to work and if you'll be able to fulfill them years, or we need to look at gaps in your record. Now, there is a little link on the site itself to show your national insurance record and to see if there's any gaps. If you find there are gaps, step 2 is to work out if we can plug these gaps for free. So you're going to have to cast your mind back and think what you were doing in that year where there was a gap in your national insurance record. Now, there are lots of scenarios in which you can claim national insurance credits for free. So for instance, you were unemployed and looking for work, perhaps you were a carer of a loved one or a family member, perhaps you were in the armed forces, you could have been a foster carer, you could have been on statutory sick pay, you could have been on maternity or paternity leave, and there's a whole list, the list is again available on the website, of exceptions where you'll then be allowed to claim manually for national insurance credits to plug these gaps. Step 3, if none of them apply to you, then you need to work out whether it's going to be beneficial to buy national insurance years to plug these gaps or not. Like I said before, if you're younger and you have a long working life ahead of you, you don't need to worry too much about gaps in your national insurance record. If you're missing a year or two and you need another 20 years to add to your record to get the full state pension, and you're going to work for another 30 years, then this will take care of itself. However, if you're older or closer to retirement age, then this might not be an option to you. The cost of buying NI years could return you a lot more money depending on a few factors. Now, it's important to note, if you are contracted out at any time in your life for a work pension or anything like that, then it's a much more complicated calculation to work out your full entitlement, and the only real way to know is to give HMRC a ring directly and they will be able to advise you. For everybody else, it's step 4, and that's the calculation. So the cost of buying a partial NI contribution year is slightly less, but on average and for most people it's going to be £824 for each NI year you want to buy. For this amount you'll get an extra £275 pre-tax each year on top of your current pension allowance. So £824 to buy a year, that gives you £275 extra per year after that. So for every year you claim the higher amount, it's a little bit morbid I know, but as long as you claim it for 3 years or longer, then your quid's in. After 3 years it pays for itself. Anything after that is money in the bank. It's free money effectively. Now there's a couple of important notes here. You'll notice I said after you start receiving the higher amount, after 3 years it's paid for itself. And that is because you can buy these NI years even if you're already claiming your state pension. So you might have a bit of savings, you might have come into a little bit of money, and you think, well, actually I want to buy an NI year to plug a gap, and then I'll get an extra £275 each year after that, and it will soon pay for itself. And secondly, you can't buy more than the full allowance. So if you've reached full allowance, you can't buy another year and increase that amount. Once you've peaked and hit the top of your allowance, that's it. So it's not worth doing in that situation. So for most people, it's a no-brainer. Obviously, we all plan to live for a long time, but 3 years isn't a large payback period, so it is definitely worth doing in most cases, but there are some exceptions. Now, before parting with any money, it's really important to check this information. You can do this by calling the pension service or the Future Pension Centre, and I will leave contact info down below so you can do that yourself. These services will give you tailored advice on your situation and if you would definitely or definitely not benefit from buying extra years. But don't put it off. Currently, we can go back all the way to 2006 to plug gaps in our NI record. But as of April 2023, we're only allowed to go back 6 tax years. So if you don't do it before then, you lose the opportunity to go back further. There are some other things to consider as well, one of them being pension credits. The extra state pension you receive from buying back years may mean you're no longer eligible for other benefits which you may have got if you didn't buy back years in the first place. Pension credits is one of these, and we go into that in a lot more detail in this video here.